Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar sponsored by PatentBots. The title of this webinar is Art Unit Prediction, Get the Right Examiner for your patent. And I'm your facilitator today. My name is Jeff O'Neill. I am the founder of PatentBots. And we have a tremendous panel who is going to answer questions about how they use art unit prediction tools in their practice. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves soon, but I just want to cover a couple of background things before we get started. First of all, you can ask questions using the Zoom Q&A tool, and you'll see an icon on the bottom of the screen for that. And we encourage you to do that, and we'll do our best to answer the questions that you ask during the webinar. Zoom also has a chat window, but please don't use that one because we'll be looking at the Zoom Q&A window. And second, we're recording this webinar, and we're going to make this recording available on our YouTube channel afterwards, so you can watch it later, and you can also share it with your colleagues. So without further ado, I'm going to ask our tremendous panel of patent attorneys to introduce themselves. And Jordan, perhaps we can start with you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jordan Lewis. I work for Greenberg Traurig. I've been a patent attorney for 4 years. I started at IBM as a patent attorney in-house, where I really focused a lot on AI and blockchain, even though I come from a chemistry background. And now at Greenberg, we handle a lot of fintech, as well as some food processing patents and the such. But it's a pleasure to meet everyone.
Thanks, Jordan. Neil, would you like to go next?
Hey, everybody. I'm Neil Kardos. I'm a partner at Harrity. I've been at Harrity for 10 years now. I've really focused primarily on patent application drafting. And prior to that, I was actually a business methods examiner. So I allowed something like 20 applications maybe in the span of 5 years. So I can tell you firsthand that you would have been in a much better position and much better off if you could steer your patent applications away from my desk.
Thanks, Neil. Thara, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, my name is Thara Russell. I am in-house counsel for Capital One, one of the patent portfolio managers there. I've been here for about 2 years, and I work with about 14 different patent law firms to manage our portfolio, which is well into the thousands of assets. And I've been doing patent law, various shades, for about 12 years. So as a searcher, as a litigator, prosecutor, and now in-house. So that's me.
Great, thanks, Thara. And last but not least, Ray.
Hi, my name is Ray Zenkert. I'm an associate at GTC. I've been involved with patents for probably about 8 years now. I started off at GE's Global Patent Operations Center, which no longer exists. And my background is primarily computer science. So if anything is software related, electrical related, probably comes across my desk.
Great, thank you, Ray. So we have a bunch of questions that we're going to ask the panelists. But before we do that, I wanted to just give a short demonstration of how an art unit predictor tool works, just to sort of give context for the other things that we're talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. All right, so this is the start page for the PatentBots Art Unit Predictor tool. And to motivate the reason for its existence, we have a listing here of the art units at the Patent Office, where we've ranked them according to their grant rate. So you can see that the hardest art unit 3689 has a grant rate of 7%. That is one of the business method art units. And the easiest art unit 2827 has a grant rate of 93%. So that's quite a difference in grant rates, across the different technology areas of the Patent Office. And an art unit predictor tool can help you get into the better art units for your client and hopefully, have a better chance of getting claims allowed. And the way that you use the tool is you want to select a draft of your patent application before you file it. You run it through our prediction tool, and then we'll show you the art units that we think are going to be assigned. And I have some example results here that I can share with you. So this is a patent application that I drafted at some point. And on the right here, we show the art unit predictions for it. And what we do is we show the top 5 art units that we think are going to be assigned. And in this case, the first one, 2652, telephonic communications, has a pretty high grant rate. Maybe I'd be pretty happy with that. But if we look at the other 4 predicted art units, they are all business method art units that have significantly lower grant rates. And in some instances, you might want to change things to reduce the odds of getting into these business method art units. And the way that an art unit predictor tool can help you do that is down below, we have the words of your claims. And we show in red the claims that are important to the prediction. So for example, these are the words that are important to the prediction of Art Unit 3629. So what you want to do now is you want to make changes to your patent application. So as a simple example, the word customer, it's not surprising that would be important for a business method art unit. And you might want to change that to a different word like user. In practice, you're going to change a lot more than just like one word, but that's like the kind of idea of things that you might want to change to steer your application to a different art unit. And I have another screen where I can show prediction results after making those kinds of changes. So I made more changes than just customer to user. But when we look at the new prediction results, we have the top 5 art units again. And now none of the top 5 art units are business method art units. They have higher grant rates. And now I'm much more confident that I'll get into a part of the patent office where it's going to be easier to get a good outcome for my client. So I hope that background was helpful. I'm going to stop my screen share. And now we're going to get into the Q&A portion of the webinar. All right, so the first question that we have is you want to ask the panel, what difficulties have you experienced in your practice with art unit assignments? And for this question, we will start off with Neil.
Yeah, this is a good question. I mean, one of the main difficulties and really relevant use cases for art unit prediction is, if your application lands in front of a business methods examiner who is constantly thinking about 101 rejections, constantly giving 101 rejections, right? That person's developed a mindset and a habit of giving those 101 rejections all the time. So you're more likely to get one. In other art units, the examiners may not have that habit or tendency or that kind of scrutiny. So it's just not really top of mind for those folks. And it's not really just 101. I think that there's a lot of scrutiny given to business methods, inventions in general, right? From the patent office, from the patent community, from the legislature, from the courts, from the media, everywhere. There's a lot of scrutiny on business methods, inventions, and business methods patents. So you might not just have a harder time with 101, but also with 103 or 112. It's kind of like there's a higher bar to patentability for business methods inventions. So you might end up having to sacrifice claim scope or even risk not getting a patent if you end up in one of those art units.
Great, thank you, Neil. Anyone else in the panel have comments on this question?
Yeah, to piggyback off what Neil was saying, especially if the majority of your clients are in fintech, right? It kind of puts you in the driver's seat of when you're drafting these claims on how to navigate the story of these claims outside of 3600 while still being able to capture, like, again, I said, the story of those claims, right? We still want to keep those claims and the novelty of those claims intact, but in a way where we're not putting it in front of an examiner who's prone to finding things in 101 or 103 or 112 as an everyday function of their jobs, where most of the examiners within the 3600 realm, that's what they do. They're normally finding the holes within your claim scopes. And with Neil having that experience, he basically said it himself. If he saw an application come across his desk, it was a hard fight, and that's kind of our job, is to make that fight a little bit easier for our clients. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you, Jordan. Ray, did you have something?
Well, I was going to say this ties into what one of the examples I've done. We actually had a case where we were running the art unit predictor while we were drafting the claims, and it got to the point where we kept landing in a particular art unit that we didn't think was appropriate, and so we had to stop and go back, and we completely revamped the claim set and filed, and it turned out that it probably saved us, because we ended up going fairly close to where AU said we were going. And if we had not done that, assuming that AU was correct initially, we would have been in a very tough spot.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you, panel. I think we'll go on to the next question. And the next question we have for you today is, we're looking for examples of how you have achieved better outcomes for your clients using an art unit prediction tool. And for this one, we're going to start with Ray, and I'm also going to share my screen again. Just give me a second. Oh, let me share the right screen. All right, here we go.
There we go. Sure. So at GTC, we follow what we call omnibus applications, which is where, we'll have like maybe 10, 20, sometimes 30 claim sets or applications wrapped up into a single specification. And, once in a while, or I would say more often than not now, we will file like maybe 10 or 15 applications on a single day. And the intent here is to try and get a spread across different art units. With the hope being that you get at least one of them in the art unit that is most appropriate for your claims, and then you can potentially just file cons off of that. And so what you're seeing on screen here is the results of one we did last year, where you can see it was pretty close, 6 out of 9. We got where we thought we were going, and all it takes is for us really is 1 or 2 into a good art unit, and we've met our goal. And I know the X's are there, but in our experience, PatentBots has been pretty accurate all the way down to individual art units within a group as well. And for us, it matters. So, if we're doing these applications, where a client has, paid over $100,000 for an application, if all of them land into, let's just say 3,600, that's not really a great outcome for us or the client. So we very much use the art unit prediction tool prior to pulling the trigger.
Mm-hmm. And Ray, was your goal here in particular to try to get different art units in addition to avoiding?
Yes. Yep. So we were actually in this example, it's hard to see, but we were targeting specific units within a group, and it came down to maybe tweaking a word here, sometimes changing something in a specification, or completely removing some terminology. But if you work with the claims enough, and if we've been finding that the predictor says you're going there, there's a very, very good chance you're going to end up in the unit you're targeting.
Right. I mean, I think this may kind of piggyback on the next question that we discussed, but does this also allow you guys to navigate specific examiners as well?
You can try to do that. We don't so much target specific examiners when we use this tool. Really the art unit, but we've been finding that if you find one good examiner, there's probably more than one in that art unit that you're going to like. So as long as you get relatively close to it, okay, you should have decent results.
So Ray, these ones here that say 21XX, are those all the same art unit, or they
No,
actually?
those they're spread out. Actually, none of these were actually in the same art unit.
Okay, so you're really getting a wide variety and widespread.
Yep. We've like I said, we've had pretty good success targeting individual units within a group. I mean, once in a while it's off. Like you can see, number 8 was off a little bit. But like I said, we only need to be correct at least once the way we do it, and we've met our objective.
Great, thanks, Ray. That was a very interesting example. Let's see, I think next we were gonna go to Jordan.
Yeah, so a specific example that we commonly come across is if we are in a specific art unit, normally in the business methods, we commonly, well, our practice at GT is we run all of our claim sets, at least for our team. We run all of our claim sets through patent bots, and then kind of work our way through that, what we find in our patent bots, to basically choose if we want to continue with that claim set in that art unit, or if we want to make drastic changes while still keeping that story and that scope of those claims intact. And so for a specific example that I think I would give is, we've seen that a specific examiner is being very hard on us in this business method art group. And so what we would do is we would see what our changes would be, if it would land us back in that specific art unit. If it is a drastically different art unit, then we go ahead with it. If not, we may file a con to try to use that con to then get in front of a different examiner. And that's just one example that we do at GT that has kind of worked for us over the last 2 years, 3 years. So that would be our example at GT for sure.
Great, thank you, Jordan. Neil, I think you're up next.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of that, you know, Jordan's talking about kind of steering applications, individual applications into particular art units. I wish I still had the data on this. I ran some numbers a while back because I was curious, you know, is this actually working? Is this art unit prediction working? Is it beneficial for us and for our clients? So I looked at every application that Harrity filed over some period of time that could reasonably be called a business method. And let's say it was something like 35 or 40 applications over some period of time. And some we just weren't really able to reframe them, you know, despite your best efforts. You can't 100% of the time, you know, get something that you're going to end outside of business methods. But let's say there were 30 or so applications where patent bots said the highest likelihood art unit is not business methods. And then let's say in 20 or so of those cases, they actually did end up outside of business methods. So, you know, of the 35 to 40 total applications that we would have loved to have had 100% of them end up outside of business methods, you know, about half of them. So I would say between half and 2/3 of the time, you can successfully reframe a business methods invention with the help of art unit prediction to help it land in a more favorable art unit.
Great, thank you, Neil. And Thara, I think you're up next.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak for today from the point of view of a patent applicant, and I'll generalize it a bit, I hope. But, you know, a patent applicant might want to file a patent application for a variety of reasons. You know, generally among those reasons is that you want to get a patent at the end of the process, but you also want to make sure that the patent application is fulfilling whatever business needs you want from it. Meaning, do you want it to be describing a particular project, a particular invention, a particular you know, field of art? And so sometimes one's options to play with language are limited. Sometimes the patent application is the way it is. Sometimes it is just going to be drafted the way it's going to be drafted. And so one kind of way in which an art unit predictor has been helpful to us, it's a lens. It's one tool in the toolbox that helps us, along with our outside counsel, to leverage our own, you know, brains and decide what to do about a patent application with the added bit of information that we get from the predictor. And sometimes that doesn't involve changing the claim language. Sometimes it's really not about changing where the, you know, application lands at the patent office. Sometimes it's about preparing as best you can for the types of rejections that you expect to see where the application is going to end up. So sometimes it's a lot more about preparing the spec in a specific way, so that when the time comes, you have the story to tell in the spec in front of the examiner that the type of examiner that you would expect to see in that art unit. And so it's not always about trying to target the patent application to a particular place, especially when you factor in business reasons for keeping an application a particular way. It could be an omnibus, like I think Ray was saying. Those are, those commonly involve a lot of different characteristics, a lot of different types of information. And, it might not be advantageous to the business to change that up. It might not be advantageous to the business to give, the claims a particular bent away from the material that they originally are meant to cover. So, but I think an art unit predictor can nevertheless be useful in those situations to give a realistic, probability, hopefully, of where an application might end up, so that you can prepare for it in the rest of the application and budget for it too, if it's going to be a hard fight.
So Tara, you saying an example of what you're saying, let's say art unit prediction says, we're highly likely to end up in business methods, right? And maybe then during drafting the specification, you put in, some extra effort to, frame the invention the way you want it, to make sure there's technical benefits and advantages that, throughout the application. Is that kind of an example of what you're talking about?
Yeah, and I would actually go so far as to say, don't even just stick with the legal changes you can make to the application. Sometimes we go back to the inventors themselves and we say, okay, tell us about the mechanical context in which this is going to be applied. How are you going to deploy this? What are you going to use? What servers, what technologies, give us the concrete picture in all its respects. See if there's something there that we can, that we can kind of flesh out our story with, so that the story is true and it's also, prepared and available to us should we need it in front of the patent office. So yeah, I mean, part of it is kind of revisiting the application as a whole from the legal standpoint. Part of it is also kind of just making sure technologically that you're in the best position you can be, especially for important patent applications. And we have been able to go back to inventors and ask them how to improve our descriptions of the inventions to help with our stories later on.
I was going to add, sometimes, if you have the report that comes out with it, and you've done your best to try and get out of, a not ideal art unit, if you have that report, you can go to the client and it helps get the point across to them, like, you really got to give us some material to combat, the one-on-ones we foresee. And sometimes having that is enough to make the client take it a little more seriously, and they'll give you some good information.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say 100% agree. And sometimes, the client is not just the in-house counsel, but also the inventors who are like, well, why do you need more? You can say, well, because we're pretty sure this is what's going to happen if we don't get more,
And I was going to say, to piggyback, sometimes when we're doing like our analysis and recommendations prior to even drafting the spec, we'll come up with a picture claim after meeting with inventors to kind of at least be on the same page of novelty with the inventors. And if we run through, art unit predictor with that picture claim, and we see exactly what art unit we're in, but we do know the value to this, to the client that this patent will provide, yeah, we won't try to drastically change from art unit to art unit, but we will have a far more in-depth conversation with inventors, trying to maybe play the range game, maybe trying to really hone down on what this novelty is, trying to really get rid of some of the fluff in the picture claim that may put us in a better art unit by itself, just removing some of that language. So yeah, it kind of puts not the burden, but it ups the ante in the discussion with inventors or clients when you see that you're in this art unit that may be a battle. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, it's interesting, Ray, you talked about presenting it to the client to kind of spur additional materials, right? But there's also some expectation setting too, right? If you're presenting this like, we're going to face an uphill battle here, right? This kind of helps to set expectations that, we could face some issues down the road, right?
Correct. Yeah. Client management. Then they're not shocked. They're not shocked after they get like, 2 office actions in a row where they're seeing the one-on-one come across.
I told you so.
Well, but you, I mean,
you know what I mean, though.
If they've given you good information, then hopefully there's enough in there to be able to feel confident that you're either going to get over the examiner, or you can, confidently take it to the board.
Yeah.
Great, thank you all. That was a really nice discussion. So I'm going to go on to the next question. And this is sort of in some ways the inverse of the previous one. Next question is, what limitations are there to an art unit predictor tool? And are there times where it doesn't work well for you? And for this question, we'll start off with Thara.
Sure. So amongst the many law firms that I'm privileged to work with right now, some of them use Art Unit Predictor software, and some of them have a hard stance against using it. And so that's interesting, to see both sides of the coin. I think I would summarize my point of view as being, kind of what I said earlier. It is a tool, and like any tool, it is only as effective as the hands using the tool. And so what an art unit predictor doesn't do is replace the lawyer who looks at the report and decides what to do about it. So you can draft claim set, you can run it through an art unit predictor, and you can, change the claims perhaps. But in doing so, you might be taking the invention too far away, the description of the invention too far away from what it was originally intended to be. You might not end up in that much of a better art unit. You might not change the art unit at all. You might still be facing a difficult prosecution. And so I would say that overall, it is a tool, and I have seen some of our law firms use it very, very effectively to say, look, this is, we used an art unit predictor on our proposed claims. It has X percentage chance of ending up in Y art unit. And so, we suggest that, we have, these 10 arguments based on the spec, that are ready to go and ready to add into the claims. But we think that we are okay with this percentage chance, and we are okay with this potential to end up in this art unit. And I've seen that kind of, recommendation and that kind of strategy succeed. We do end up in a sort of historically difficult art unit, but because of the quality of the case and the attorneys behind it, we nonetheless see success. And in those cases, there's a lot to be said for client expectation management, I think. If we know that there's going to be an uphill battle, a client can say upfront, okay, we might be facing several rounds of prosecution here, but I do think that we're set up for an eventual good argument, or at least on appeal, we have a really good setup here. Let's try it out. We have the budget for it. Or inversely, no, this is going to land us in 6 RCEs, and we just need an allowance now. It's kind of like something that a client can give feedback about. So I think it's a tool that can be very, very helpful in the right hands. I have also seen, some people use an art unit predictor to not very great effect. If you use an art unit predictor, you find out that your specification, your claims are going to land you in a particular art unit, and then you don't do anything useful with that information, well, then it hasn't landed you anything. So I don't know if this is like a particularly substantive answer, but I mean, it's really all about what you do with the information in the end. And so that's where I think that's the limitations of an art unit predictor are just that it isn't, it's information, it's not a strategy. I think that it's, as far as I know, it's like I shouldn't say I know exactly how often it is right about where things land, but we hope that it's useful information. We hope that it's accurate. But in the end, it's got some informational limitations as well. And the USPTO is always changing, perhaps. And so in the end, you need to have a good brain behind the patent application and behind prosecution anyway. And so it's just, that's it. It's a tool.
I was going to add to that. So I guess this is sort of like an advantage I see of it. I think one thing that that the art unit predictor for patent bots does well is I think it takes out the human element. So we had a case where we paid another entity some fees to do an analysis, and they held themselves out as one of the entities that the USPTO actually contracts to do the actual classification process. And so we went through their process. It was, fairly interactive. We went through a couple rounds of claims with them, and they said, this is where we think it's going to go. And they were way off the mark. And that was an expensive and time-consuming process. Whereas with patent bots, I think it has a better view overall what's going on because it's not, I guess, biased. I guess you could say it doesn't have that human element in it. So while the human classifiers may think they know how the system is supposed to work, they may not understand, I guess, how the other portions of the classification system are actually behaving. So I've been getting better results with the patent bots version versus the third-party contractor we use.
And to Thara's point, as it being a tool, some tools take training, right? So I can say that when I first started using patent bots, I was nowhere near as savvy as I am now with it, right? I mean, just looking at, these words are flagged. Okay, well, what do we do with these words? It wasn't until actually continually using the patent bots process to actually be able to hone in, okay, so I see that this word is flagged, but this word is very important to the story of this claim. So I can't drastically change this word, but the words surrounding it, which aren't as much of a flag, or a word in the title, something like that, which, aren't normally thought of as things to change, could drastically change our outcome. And so, like she said, it's a tool. So, if you can hone your craft and hone your ability to use it, then in our profession, the more data we have, it's only going to make the patent and the claims better. So that's why we view it as something that, we use almost daily, right? It's not like the end all be all, but it gives us another leg or another thought or another piece of conversation with inventors to get us more information, to get us better claims, to get us a more fleshed out patent. And that's only more valuable to the client.
Thara, I'm curious. So you mentioned some folks having a hard stance against using it. Do you have any insight into why that may be? I'm sure Jeff would love to know that.
Yeah, I was actually realizing that I didn't elaborate on that. I think it stems from a concern of over-reliance on a tool, and perceiving the information that it provides as being potentially more all-powerful or all-knowing than it is. I think that in my view, a good practitioner should be able to rein in a tendency to over-rely on a tool, and to, in the end, look at their own work and decide, yeah, this is the best effort for this money, for this time that I have for this invention, and stop it there. Even if the art unit predictor is saying, yeah, you're getting this into an art unit with a 5% allowance rate. So I think that the concern or the kind of stance against it is about taking away too much of the human element. I do think that what Ray said is right. There is sort of a human bias when you're relying only on, your own perception of your own claims that you have drafted. You think they're pretty good, and that's the only perspective that you have in that moment. There's a bit of potentially anyway, a potential downside to that too. And then I think that the concern with the folks who don't buy into art unit predictors at the moment is, at least in part, because they are concerned that human element will be taking too much in the other direction, taking too much out of the equation.
One of Jordan's statements, I thought of a good question. I'm going a little off script here. Hope it's okay. I thought it might be interesting to mention if you have any sort of pro tips for how to use an art unit predictor well. Like it's something that you've learned over the course of using it, over a year or so.
Well, I'll say again, prior to, even having a discussion with inventors, once we've, gotten our disclosure and we see exactly what they're trying to accomplish, we'll draft a picture claim, run it through patent bots, see where it lands us, see where it predicts us, basically, and kind of try to pinpoint what they view as the novelty and what we see as patentable, right? And we try to marry those two to the best of our abilities. But with running it through the patent bots, we're able to, and not just the claims, right? Like I said, the title, something as mundane as that, right? I feel like a lot of practitioners don't even think that, a change in a title can land you in a different art unit or can put you in a different light in front of an examiner. But small things like that can have such a big impact on the totality of the patent. And that's something that we picked up on over time, right? It wasn't that we just knew about it the first day we downloaded patent bots. It's not like we knew that, and that's why I said it's a tool. So with the tool comes skills, right? But yeah, getting the most information out and also being able to provide that information to an inventor to get even more information from that inventor so they can really hone down on what they view as the novelty. It just makes our job a lot easier.
Great.
Yeah, I can share a couple things here. So one of them Jordan mentioned he talked about, when you first started using patent bots, he wasn't sure, like, what are the flag words? What can you replace them with? And over time, the more you use it, you figure that stuff out. So we have set up like an intranet page that says, like, here are common words that will, trip you up, get you in a art unit you maybe don't want to be. And then here are some words or terms or phrases to consider using instead, or in place of those bad terms. And the term that you may use in place of it may depend on, there may be a different term depending on the context of the invention. So that's one thing. And then we also have, like, here are a set of art units or technologies that you can steer towards, because of the common things that we see, whether it's, this involves machine learning and you can try to steer towards an art unit that focuses on machine learning, or database management, or, I think we have like 5 or 6 different art units or technology centers that we kind of, or technology areas that we try to steer towards or give guidance that, hey, these are ones that are kind of easy to adapt inventions of this client based on the technology to steer towards these art units. And then here are a handful of matters that we've successfully done that in, so that the drafter can go and look and see, some examples of what someone had done in another case.
Great, thanks. Those are very helpful. So I think we'll go on to the next question. And this is sort of a different type of question. Are there any ethical questions with either using or not using an art unit predictor tool in your practice? And I think we'll start with Jordan for this one.
So as stated, we at GT, and our team at GT, I should state, we use it almost daily, right? And it goes to the point to where we believe the more data we have, the better our patent becomes. So I wouldn't say that not using it would be unethical, but I don't think, if you know that this tool is out there and it gives you a lens or into where this could land, it is almost extremely beneficial to you and to your client to at least use it. I'm not saying rely on it. I'm not even saying that it has to be like, the end all be all, but the at least ability to provide you with that inkling of more information, that inkling of more data, just is beneficial to not only your client, but to your practice. And so I think it is completely ethical to use it. Now, maybe, getting into the trying to get around specific examiners and all that kind of stuff, that can be a discussion for a later date. But at least the ability to, get that additional information to then present to the client, it's invaluable. And so I would say that it's definitely ethical to use.
I mean, I think it's almost becoming a quasi requirement to use it because of the wild volatility between different units of the PTO. I mean, if the PTO, was a little more consistent across the units, nobody would be needing an art unit predictor. But it's kind of like a problem the PTO is cost.
Right. It can bath it pretty straightforward.
I've had some people say, well, are you playing around with the claims, playing around with the PTO? It's not really the case. I mean, if you think about it, really, you're trying to put yourself in the best position to succeed, and you're framing the invention in a way that it's more patentable, right? I mean, shouldn't we be doing that, right? I mean, you're talking about inventions that involve technology, and you're really then asking the questions, digging in with the inventors. How does this work technically, technologically speaking? How does this work? And then you're putting that stuff into the patent application and the claim. So, it's framing the invention in a way that it ought to be framed, from a technical perspective.
It's your job to frame the invention so the client has the best chance of getting a patent.
Let's say that, it goes there from the applicant standpoint, again, there's only so much that you want to mess around with the disclosure of an invention in a lot of cases. I mean, your mileage may vary with a particular application or with a particular client, but if you're talking about, from the patent applicant standpoint, simply manipulating a patent application to get in front of a good art unit is like, that's not the point of a patent application. I mean, it is part of the equation. Obviously, again, you do want to see success usually at the patent office, but it's not the whole story. And I think that, as Neil alluded to, a lot of the times, if you use an art unit predictor tool, it clues you into what it thinks might happen to your patent application. You can improve the patent application with substantive changes, with more information, a better description, while keeping it focused on the invention that you want it to cover. And so it isn't necessarily anything about, I don't know, gaming a system. I won't say, I won't speak for everybody, obviously, but I think that it is, again, it's a tool. I guess that's my moral of the story today.
I think, if you're in this field and you do not just come across it, right? It becomes something that becomes a part of a routine for you, then the ethical question of it isn't even a thought, right? It's more so, like Neil said, this is a way for you to enhance your patent with substantive changes that are directed towards the novelty of this patent that you can then present not only to your client, but to inventors as well, right? So it's I wouldn't say needed, but I'm very thankful that we use it, right? I mean, it shines a light on things that we have to fight every day, right? I mean, as a patent prosecutioner, 101 rejections aren't fun. They aren't easy, right? So if you have the ability to not even negate, right, but to prepare for a 101 fight that you're going to be having, and now you've added 12 to 15 paragraphs in your specification that can combat that 101 rejection by itself, simply because there's a small sliver of a chance that you may be in front of that type of art unit, that just gives you so much of something to fall back on, right? And so it's invaluable.
Yeah, I see a lot of really interesting questions in the Q&A about, how often is the art unit predictor, recalibrated or retrained or tuned, and, how it keeps up with, the processes of the PTO for a CPC assignment. And I think that those demonstrate that it's about data. It's about trying to understand the system in which we're working. That's what that's what Art Unit predictors are trying to do. They're trying to offer data in a valuable fashion. Clients want data so that they can understand what they're budgeting for and understand, they can understand their chance of success. Law firms want it so that they can manage client expectations and strategize and give a good work product. So in those contexts, more data is not an unethical thing. Especially when it's data that is publicly available, data that is, open for everybody to, see and use manually. And I think, as long as one acknowledges the limitations of machine learning on those data, it's a really valuable effort to try and make use of what information we have.
Mhm. Great, thank you, everyone. So the next question we've covered a little bit, but I think it's worth to revisit it in more detail. Next question is, how does the use of an Art Unit predictor tool impact client relations? And do you let your clients know that you are using this tool? And we'll start with Neil for this one.
Yeah, I'm going to use the Thara metaphor here. I think it's a tool. It's a tool in your tool belt to help differentiate you from your competitors, right? It's not going to overcome bad claims. It's not going to overcome bad strategy. It's not going to overcome any of those things, but it's a competitive world out there, right? And so the more you can do to help differentiate yourself from the competition, the better. I mean, it shows, and we do for, to answer the second part of your question, the clients that we use Art Unit prediction for, we do share that we're using it, and we share the results, and we share it in a way that says, hey, it shows that you're thinking about strategy, but it's not gonna, if you draft claims that aren't in line with the business value, right, then the fact that you're using Art Unit prediction doesn't matter, right? You have to be thinking strategically from that perspective as well. So again, it's a tool to kind of help show that you're thinking about strategy and help differentiate you from your competitors.
Mm-hmm.
I'll speak from a personal standpoint for a moment because of just the volume of cases that I handle and the speed at which I have to, review the work and analyze it. And with law firms who use Art Unit predictors for us, they usually paste the prediction in their emails to us. This is what we got out of our Art Unit predictor, and this is what we think about it. This is what we're going to do about it. So that generally is the case that we know when it's being used. For the either way, for law firms who use it or in law firms who don't, they have to be able to show very quickly to us that they have done the strategy work that Neil has mentioned. And if you don't have an Art Unit predictor, report, it's not like I'm gonna, come chase you down. Although I have asked, oh, why don't you use it? Which is why I know the answer to that question. But in those cases, I need to see the strategy fast. I need to see that they have thought out the possible rejections. They have thought out where this might land. They have thought out what they're going to do if this lands where we think it's going to land. And then they have to do that without any sort of concrete prediction, in numbers. It becomes a human prediction. So I don't know if it's more work for them to do it that way. I'm not exactly sure one way or another, but the work has to be shown either way. And I think the Art Unit predictor does, show quickly in a nice format that some consideration has been given to it. And then of course we look, as a client, we look for the other side, which is what are you going to do about it? So.
Just to piggyback off that for a second, we use it to justify our strategy to the client a lot of times. Especially when we're doing 10 or 20 filings on a single day. Let's say, why are you spending all those filing fees, a single instance instead of spreading out over the cost of a year or two? And then we can go back to them and say, hey, look, here's why. We filed all these on the same day, and we got a good spread. So it makes it easier for us to make our case and to show them that we do understand what we're doing. Once we get the results back. It helps build that trust. When they come to us with their next big project, it's easier for us to pose that, let's file 15 on the same day again.
And to further everybody's point, I don't know if we're, unique in doing this, but when we do run a patent bot, predictor, the strategy will take a lot of times in our recommendations, we even take that next step into giving like con considerations, right? Like, how would we change these claims if a continuation was needed, right? So like, we even go the next step as to say, okay, this is what's presented. This is the percentage that you may end up in. If all else fails, these are the changes we would make to the claims to get us in a consideration for a con, right? And so like, it just gives you an extra level of strategy to present to clients, which, if, you know, speaking from coming from in-house to the firm life, you know, if you can basically tell your client, like, not only have we drafted this claim for you, predicted where this is going to go, but we also strategize what changes we would make to the claim if needed. That gives them a lot of reassurance in you as an outside counsel. So yeah, I think it's very valuable as a tool, but it still falls back on the attorney and the preparation that attorney is willing to go through, right? Again, it's just more data. It's just more and more data, and the more data you can possibly build is only going to make the patent better. So.
Great, thank you all. It's super helpful. The next question was actually also asked by one of the attendees, and it relates to, you know, what are good strategies when you're already in an undesired art unit or an art unit you're having trouble with. And I'm going to throw in a little data here that we computed. When you file a continuation application, the odds are about 90% that you're going to go back to the same art unit and even the same examiner. So just as some sort of technical background, when you're filing a continuation application, the art unit predictor results are less useful because of that bias to go back to the same exact art unit and examiner, because, you know, that's sort of the default. So I guess to get back to the question, let's say you have a tough examiner, a tough art unit, you're there, it's too late to use the predictor tool. What do you do then to try to get a good outcome for your client?
Well, we have done the continuation strategy frequently. Well, recently, I should say. What we would do is we'll let the parent maybe go abandon, and then we change the claims to a T, right? To where we're keeping the story of this novelty of these claims, but we've seen this art unit predictor that these words, as well as these rejections from this examiner, they are honing in on a specific phrase or a specific tone. And so in that con, we have to then change that tone while still keeping the story of those claims. And we have been successful in getting it in front of a different examiner. It may be in the same art unit. It may be in a different art unit. But I think, and that's where another thing of these art unit predictors comes in, is they also present examiner results and examiner percentages. You can go and look up an examiner specifically and their percentage of grant rate, right? You can see how hard this examiner you're in front of. And sometimes it's as easy as changing examiners, right? But once you're in it, the con kind of has saved us more than once. And so, but that is something, again, you have to address with the client. You kind of have to clue them in and give them that strategy. So for client expectations, they don't see that you're just letting patents go abandoned or just drafting cons for no reason. And so that goes to that client management as well, an expectation.
Jeff, do you have data on CIPs? So, because we've gone that route, you know, rather than a straight con, file a CIP, and we've had some success with that. Just curious if you have data on that.
Yeah, I did run that comparison. And it was pretty close. Like CIPs, you have a slightly better chance, but it wasn't huge. Like it might have been like, 92% chance of the same art unit for a con and maybe 88% for like a CIP.
I don't know how many people are applying this strategy though, right? When you're filing a con or CIP, you're looking at a big body of data, right? Where there may not be any intention to get.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So it might be a little less hard than the data suggests, because usually you want the same examiner in the same art unit, or often you do. That's right. So we have a lot of great questions here, but many of them are kind of technical questions that are kind of more directed to me rather than the panelists. I think I'm not going to do those right now, but we'll try to do a blog post in the future to address all those kind of great technical questions. I guess going back to the panelists, we're getting close to the end of the hour here. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about relating to your use of an art unit predictor?
I think somebody just posted in the chat something. I mean, saying that the USPTO automatically routes a con to the same examiner unless they're no longer at the office. But in my own practice as a prosecutor and now, I've definitely seen the strategy work of filing a con and presenting a different story, resulting in a different art unit or a different examiner. And I will say that when we do that, or at least when I personally have done that, I have tried to make it about a different story. If either it's an omnibus application where there are multiple inventions and I change the invention entirely, I change the claims from the ground up to claim something else in the application, or it's, really substantively changing, what is the novel part of the invention focusing on. So everything from the ground up really, really changes, in a way that I really think holds water. And I think I've seen our firms do that. I think I've done that personally during prosecution of cons where it has worked. So I'll just add that, to our previous discussion in response to the comments.
I mean, I would say, once you're in the art unit, it's the other tools that PatentBox offers that I think are the more useful once you're already inside the unit to be able to gauge, am I running into a wall here? Do I need to go back and completely revamp the claims? Maybe we just cut our losses and let the case go. That 90%, like Jeff said, we found that too before we started using the PatentBox art unit predictor. It was just the con is the controlling factor.
And one thing that I appreciate firms doing is when they use a tool like the art unit predictor, they don't necessarily make it just about the art unit prediction, but rather about what words are being flagged. What does this say about the claims that we're drafting and the strategy that we are pursuing as a whole? What does it say about how we're framing this invention that, we're using this kind of word all over the place? I'm at Capital One, and so we come up with a lot of claims, that involve words like financial or, or transactional or, point of sale or something like that, or a customer, consumer. And so, it causes us to really, I really appreciate it when law firms look at the use of words like that and say, well, is this really what the invention is about? Or is this just how Capital One's inventors came up with it in this particular context? What is the true invention here? Does it really have to be about a customer transaction? Or is it about some model in the background? Is it about something else going on? I really appreciate when it's, when the tool is used for, whatever, deeper thoughts an attorney can come up with, and then in that way it can kind of really showcase the work of the attorneys as well.
Great. Well, I think we're just about at the end of the hour here. Thank you so much to all the panelists. Your observations and comments have been really helpful, and I think the attendees will really appreciate this. And just for anyone who wasn't here at the beginning, we are going to take this recording and put it on YouTube, so you can go ahead and watch it again or share with your colleagues. But thank you, everyone, and we will let you all get back with your day. And thank you so much.